We are back on Morning Line. With us this morning, attorney Barbara McGinnis with McGinnis and Takis Law, Elder Law, and we're taking your phone call 737-7587. If you want to jump in, we got some folks to wait through the break, Barbara. Let's go to Taylor. What do you say? Taylor, good morning. How are you, Taylor?
Nick, I am fine, and I appreciate you and your program this morning. This lady does such a good job, she and her partner, on a subject we never hear discussed anywhere except here. So, thank you.
That's right.
I have a question that I know most questions like this are fact dependent, same as if you're talking to a financial advisor or whatever it is. But my question is, what are some of the more common things that, other than your home real estate, would you want to put into a living revocable trust, and what are some of the things you'd want to leave out of that typically? Okay. Again, I know there's a lot of different possibilities there, but any of the common ones for the average person would be appreciated.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Taylor.
Oh, fun question, because I love talking about how a trust can work for people.
Okay.
Sometimes folks are just scared of the whole idea, or they think they have to have a lot of assets to be able to benefit from a trust, and that's not really the case.
Maybe you can explain that, why trusts are, what they are exactly.
So he asked particularly about a revocable living trust. Okay. So a revocable trust, it's very user friendly. Okay. It's designed predominantly to avoid probate, because assets then pass by the terms of the trust, not by will necessarily. So a will has to be probated to be effective. A trust does not. Okay. The revocable trust, no real tax implications. You still retain your homestead exemption for your house. You might have to reapply for if you get a tax freeze or any sort of tax break, or what's the one for agriculture, the green belt stuff. You might have to reapply for those benefits, but you're still eligible for that, right? Because you still own the assets in your revocable trust. Very commonly, the person that owns the assets remains both the manager, the trustee, and the beneficiary of those assets. So from an IRS standpoint, you still own all this money. It's still in your estate. Okay. So we would recommend for a revocable trust that you house, any other real estate. I generally do not retitle vehicles to a revocable trust. Because vehicles pass as personal property anyway. Money. I was going to say cash. Money that's real money. So any money in the bank, checking account, savings account, CDs, investment accounts, stock, all of those kind of things can be owned by your revocable trust. Okay. You cannot, should not, transfer title to retirement accounts like qualified money. IRAs or 401ks would not be owned by your trust. Okay. All right, so that's one very clear don't do. The other thing that we usually do not retitle is the checking account that receives your Social Security. Oh. I usually leave that in the individual's name. Okay. Now you can make those POD, or payable on death, to the trust.
I'm just curious, based on avoiding probate, why on earth doesn't everyone just do a trust instead of a will?
Seriously, I know.
Okay, good. Okay, I wasn't sure. It just sounds, and so a trust, by the way, just to be clear then, once you set up this trust, you have a beneficiary for this, and that bypasses. A trust is basically, a lot of people are like, well, so what's really the difference between a trust and a will? It's still a document, a legal document, like a will, but it bypasses probate, which is where you have to go to court and have a judge look at the will and say, yeah, okay, this makes sense, move on.
And you
What's
can change
different about it? Yeah.
You can change your revocable trust if you decide that your remainder beneficiaries, it's going to be to my kids an equal individual shares.
And you want to change that?
But you want to change it? You
so
just
how's
change
it really different from a will?
Well, it doesn't have to be probated.
Oh, well, right. Aside from that, what is where's the rub why you wouldn't want to do a trust?
Well, a lot of times it's time consuming to retitle those assets.
Okay.
Because they do need to be, for the trust to be effective, the assets need to be retitled.
It's just more complex and people aren't as savvy to go about that way. I mean, I guess.
The other thing that a revocable trust can do for people as we age, it will not offer any asset protection. So it's not going to protect you from the nursing home, getting your house kind of thing. But it does help that in the sense that you can name your trustee, you can name a successor trustee to manage your money when you're no longer capable of doing it yourself.
Okay.
Maybe you're not necessarily incapacitated, maybe you're just frail.
Yeah.
And you want a child or to step in and take over management. In that instance, it helps protect that owner, elder, from potentially financial abuse from a variety of sources. It's not really creditor protection, but undue influence, scams, those kind of things. It protects from that. So it allows for some easy money management.
Just seems to make sense to me. I mean, I'm going to look into because we have a will set up, I suppose. I think I'm pretty sure we do. We should. Yeah. But if you decide to say to heck with the will, or can you have both? You can have both. I guess you can have both. But
and a lot of one common way to set this up is, and it's sort of like the worst of both worlds, but it is a common way of doing it, is to have a will that is called a pour-over will, in that it controls your assets and it pours over into the trust at your death. Well, that will still has to be probated to get that impact. So then it just passes according to the terms of the trust. You can do it in reverse, in that you have assets held in trust and then it pours over into the will of, usually it's a couple and it's the first to die. And there may be some real strategic reasons for that to happen. And that could be, fact-based, like our caller said.
Yeah. Taylor will figure it out. Trust me on that. Let's go to Mike. Mike, good morning. Hi, Mike.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
I've got a Medicaid question, and what I wanted to ask about it is, what level of assets do you have to bleed down to qualify for Medicaid? And also, does that include IRAs and your house? And then I'd like a follow-up question.
Sure.
Okay, so for Medicaid eligibility in the state of Tennessee, you're allowed $2,000 in countable assets. That begs the question, what's a non-countable asset? So a non-countable or an exempt asset would be your homestead, your personal property, including one vehicle, your life insurance if there's no cash value attached to that, your funeral, your prepaid funeral, your burial plot, and that's pretty much it. Yes, the $2,000 is inclusive of your IRAs. So
that is inclusive of the IRA. All right, answers that. Now, if I wanted to say take out a home equity loan or do a reverse mortgage on my homestead, does that then money count against me for Medicaid qualification?
No, because that's money that's basically borrowed money. That's a debt. You're creating a debt. So a spend down strategy is to pay off your debt. So let's say you're living in your home, you qualify for you need or qualify for a reverse mortgage, so that maybe you can pay for care to stay in home. Then if you get frail enough.
That's my question. Is if I wanted to get cash out of my home, the equity, but then stay in my home for care, then I don't get counted against. I can still qualify for Medicaid?
Because you still have to have that $2,000 limit. If you're pulling out equity, that gets to be real tricky. If you're pulling out equity on a monthly basis so that it's an income stream, that could be
could push him over the $2,000 and could be an issue.
Well, income separate from resources. So we're looking at
I prefer to stay in my home, and if I needed care, rather than go to a nursing home because it's very expensive. Because I never bought long-term, care insurance.
Yeah.
And so before my wife died, I took care of her myself. But then when we had to put her into a nursing home, it was full-time nursing care, and it was running $8,000 a month. And I don't want to pay that for me. I'd like to stay in my home, and if I get to the point to where I have to qualify for Medicaid, I like to stay in my home for care. I just want to make sure it's not counted against me to qualify for Medicaid if I pull equity out of my house.
No, it's not going to be.
You don't think it will be?
I don't think it would be.
Yeah.
Now, what becomes tricky in that situation is continuing to pull equity out and qualifying at the same time. And it may or may not be necessary to do that because the way TennCare provides home-based care, and again, you have to meet this really rigid medical exam to show that functionally it's not just about, oh, I need somebody to come clean up my house kind of thing. Then the managed care organization that is assigned to you assesses for the number of hours per week, or whether they do hours per year and then divide it into a per week system.
Okay.
So it can be anywhere from 4 hours a week to 30 or 35 hours a week, and that goes a long way into helping someone stay at home.
So as we go to the break, I mean, someone like him then, if he wants to pursue and get through it, and it's good questions he's asking, I mean, is that something you guys can help set up for him?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's what I'm talking about. Stick around. At the end of the show, of course, we'll have the number up for Take Us a McGinnis. And yeah, these kind of things, questions you have to ask because you think you've got it lined up, and then all of a sudden you're over some limit, and that benefit you were counting on goes away. And that's why sometimes, it's worth, having someone help guide you through the process. It just makes sense. Listen, we'll take a break. When we come back, as it is so often the case, as the time passes on in the show, more calls come in. So we've got a bunch we've got to get when we come back from this next break.
All right.
So stay with us. We'll be back right after this.